Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be exploring the astrology of July 2025. Now, at the risk of repeating myself, well, I think I've already kind of taken that risk several times this year. It is going to be another big month. It really, really is another big month because, firstly, Uranus is changing signs. That is the most important thing that is going on this month. And that is going to significantly change the atmosphere. Remember that Uranus is the dispositor of Pluto at the moment. So in other words, Uranus is sort of overseeing what Pluto is doing in his sign or his house. So we know then, just with that little piece of information, that if Uranus changes signs, there is some kind of new agenda coming in, that Uranus is going to impress upon Pluto. So this is going to be very, very interesting. We've also got a very significant activation of the nodal axis. So on top of this sort of revolutionary change that's coming in with Uranus and all the sense of not quite knowing which way we're turning because all the planets are kind of turning backwards and forwards, then we've got this very strong karmic overtone to the entire month. And we've also got this very powerful amount of Aries energy in the chart. Now, of course, we've had this for a while, but I did just want to kind of draw attention to it because through July and also August, we're going to have Saturn, Neptune, Ceres, Eris and Chiron here. Of course, Eris is very, very slow moving, but I'm just kind of noticing we have a big pile up, which tells us that there's a lot of focus on Aries themes generally, so themes to do with identity, to do with conflict, anger, taking action. And Saturn in Aries is the trouble with leaders. It's also learning personal responsibility. Neptune in Aries is idealization of all the Aries attributes, both positive and negative. So we have the heroic leaders, or the leaders who would like to be seen as heroes and sort of greater than they actually are. And this is also idealization about the spiritual quest. It's idealization about the self, and it's also feeling very lost individually, each of us feeling lost and limited. Neptune and Saturn. Ceres in Aries is trying to nurture this new beginning because it is a very big new beginning for humanity, as Neptune and Saturn are going to meet in Aries and are now currently in a conjunction. It is a very important new start, but we're not yet finished with all the old stuff. So Ceres is struggling, and she's going to have her work cut out for her because she's going to have a retrograde here along with all the other Aries planets. Eris in Aries is the truth teller and also the discord, the disharmony we feel within ourselves, the disharmony in the world that is connected to our warring nature and to the issues with the masculine, the wounded masculine. Chiron in Aries. Don't forget, Chiron and Eris are now traveling very, very close together, and they will stay close together right up until June next year when Chiron moves into Taurus. These two are hanging out together for a long, long conversation. It's like Eris is saying, hey, here's your problem. I know you don't like it, but tough. That's the problem. Your anger is your problem. Your lack of initiative is your problem. I'm kind of picking on some negatives here because we're thinking of the disharmony around Eris. So lack of initiative, lack of can-do kind of attitude, lack of personal responsibility with Saturn, a lack of true leadership, a lack of knowledge, the propensity to kind of start fighting with one another and to sort of amplify conflicts instead of doing the harder thing, which is actually trying to find a resolution and to work our way towards some kind of partnership, or at least, not fighting with one another. So Aries is pointing this all out, and Chiron is doing his very best to show us ways to fix this, to fix what can be fixed. Sometimes we can't fix everything, in which case we have to move into a place of acceptance. But even with that, with Chiron in Aries, it's about being active, no more passive kind of, I'm too wounded, I'm too hurt. That was Chiron in Pisces, by the way. So when Chiron was in Pisces, there was a little bit of sort of escapism and just spiritual nourishment will heal me. And that's, of course, a good thing. But there's now a push to, like I say, take responsibility with Saturn and to do what we can individually to keep that fire alive, our inner fire, our confidence, our motivation. All of this has been suffering. Probably, no doubt, for some of us, kind of looking at the state of the world right now, it's just like, what's the point? I can't do anything. That's very Neptune in Aries as well. That's a shadow expression of Neptune in Aries, this defeatism. What's the point? My hands are tied, so let's just kind of not do anything because I can't. But Chiron and Aries, now more towards the end of Aries, are saying that's not good enough. We have to get it together. We have to find ways to work with this. And it's not about sort of beating ourselves over the head. Aries is associated with the head. It's about just doing what we can and focusing on what we can do. So this is all the backdrop to the month. And we begin with the first major transit of the month, which is Venus entering Gemini. This is on the 4th of July. So that means Venus is moving from her home sign Taurus into Mercury's sign Gemini. So the way that we express ourselves when it comes to love and relationships is now changing. The first thing is, with Venus going into Gemini, we need to have a mental connection with a partner or a lover. We need to have that feeling that we can talk to one another, that we're understood. That's what turns us on with Venus going into Gemini. It's about making connections. So we have a love of making connections. We have a love of conversation when Venus moves into Gemini. But also the actual act of getting together with someone. It's like we need to be on the same page as one another, or at least able to find a way to connect and talk to one another. So Venus goes into Gemini, where we prize the idea of connecting and curiosity. We're curious about each other. We're curious about people. It can be a really nice transit simply because of that, because it means that we're not judging. We just want to get to know someone, even if they have got different sort of ways of thinking. Also, on this date, we will have Neptune stationing retrograde. So this is the first of the planets this month to go retrograde. Every year, Neptune spends a significant amount of time in retrograde motion. So Neptune will station at 2 degrees 10 minutes of Aries. And during this retrograde period, Neptune will actually go back into Pisces. So that's going to be on the 22nd of October. And Neptune will be retrograde until December the 10th, 2025. So it is around 5 months that Neptune is in retrograde motion. And the idea is that during this time, Neptune is unveiling where we have been inclined to lose ourselves or lead ourselves astray. Neptune, like I mentioned earlier, is connected to idealism and dreams, because it's the imagination, all the wonderful things that we could do, and we want to transcend our circumstances, which is, of course, a good thing, that we want to try to rise above where we are right now. But sometimes we can just simply get above ourselves, beyond ourselves, and we start to move in the realms of fiction. And so Neptune's retrograde period slowly unravels those fictions. It shows us where we haven't been honest with ourselves because we wanted to stick with the dream because it was nice and comfortable or inspiring in Aries. So sometimes we might feel disappointment, or we might encounter some kind of loss or disappointment whilst Neptune is retrograde. But normally the things that sort of disappear around this time, or the ideas, the hopes that we had that disappear around this time, are because we're making way for new dreams to come in. And so we have to get rid of the old first. On the 7th of July, this is the big day because Uranus is going to enter Gemini. I will be doing a separate piece all about this. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about it in this video because there is much more to come. So firstly, this is going to be a preview because Uranus will go back into Taurus. So it will go back into Taurus on the 8th of November. And then on the 26th of April 2026, that is when Uranus will enter Gemini properly for the long term. So it'll actually be till 2032, 2033. So it's going to start to move into Cancer in 2032 and fully move into Cancer out of Gemini in 2033. So it's a long period of time, roughly 7-8 years with Uranus in Gemini. But now we get the preview. So it's important to start paying attention to your Gemini house, or wherever 0 Gemini is in your chart if you use a different house system. Just pay attention to what is coming up, particularly what thoughts are coming up now. What thoughts, what messages, what information, what communication. Because Gemini, like I said, is about connection, communication, curiosity. It is how we speak to one another. It is about the mind. And Uranus going into Gemini says globally, collectively, it means we are radically going to change how we communicate with one another. There's certainly a technological aspect with this, especially as Uranus will form trines to Pluto. And I will no doubt say it again. I've already been saying that Uranus going into Gemini is a little bit like ET phone home. Uranus is often associated with the things that are different. It speaks of anything that's on the fringes. It speaks of anything that is just wild and completely different. And hey, life on other planets, well, wouldn't that make us think, Gemini, very differently, Uranus, about ourselves, humanity. Remember, Pluto is now in Aquarius, the sign that is associated with humanitarianism. It's also just humanity. Humanity. So Uranus going into Gemini really could make us think very differently about humanity as a whole. So my money is on either we get confirmation that there is some kind of alien life out there, which is really going to radically change the way we think about everything, or maybe this could also be connected with artificial intelligence, because that is also Uranus. Uranus rules technology, Gemini, intelligence. So we have artificial intelligence really stepping into the fore. We have not seen anything yet. I know AI has exploded everywhere, but we really don't know we're born yet, especially with all of that emphasis on Aries. Aries is the first sign, so that's a sign of birth. So there's something here that's multiplying. That's Gemini, the twins. Gemini speaks of things that multiply. So we have this feeling that things are speeding up, things are multiplying, and it's all connected with the way that we communicate, and the way that we even think. Maybe this is also to do with transhumanism as well. There's a whole bunch of stories that are going to come up here, but we're also telling a very new Uranus story. This is something very, very different. So just pay attention what is coming up in your own life, because each of us are going to need to respond to what's happening. Each of us are learning something new somewhere in our own lives. And that might be because of what's happening in the world out there, or maybe it's a different frequency, a different quality. It's just asking us to think in new ways about this area of our lives. And maybe there are new choices that come from that as well. So it's a really, really powerful transit. And I feel as though it's kind of going to show us a lot of the themes quite rapidly before it goes back into Taurus. So we're going to get some very strong clues coming in as to what this is going to mean for us collectively. There are going to be some stories that are very significant and maybe inspiring. I know there's trepidation with a lot of things that are going on right now, and certainly with AI. But, maybe there's also room for being inspired by the potential of what this technology and this new way of thinking, what that could lead us to. On the 10th of July, we will have a full moon in Capricorn. I will do a deep dive into this lunation over on my Patreon. Substack members also have access to my readings for the lunations. If you love asteroids, you will love my lunation readings, because I always look at the asteroid connections, these minor stories that are playing out and accentuating or complementing the other stories that we have in play. So for the full moon in Capricorn, we're at the peak of the lunar cycle, and the issues that are now front and center are connected with Capricorn themes. So there is a need to feel as though we've accomplished something. There's a need to feel as though we're making our mark on the world and contributing. And generally speaking, this lunation can bring up themes connected to our work and our responsibilities, our profession, our business. These are the kinds of issues that are occupying our minds around this time. On the 11th of July, Juno stations direct. So Juno has been retrograde in Scorpio, doing some really deep work to help us to facilitate our relationships, to help us to go deeper, to have more intimate bonds with one another. And she's also been working on how we share the resources we have between us. So now that she's stationing direct, we can start to move forwards with our contracts and agreements and commitments. And then on the 13th of July, Saturn will station retrograde. I have actually got a video here on YouTube. It's a video version of an article that's on my website. I'm going to put both links below. The video talks you through the whole cycle of Saturn retrograde each year. And then the article on my website, the written version, that will have the updated dates for this year. So you'll be able to put all that information together so you have a really comprehensive overview of the Saturn retrograde period. Generally speaking, whenever Saturn goes retrograde, it is a time for us to examine where we are resisting the work that Saturn would like us to do. So in Aries, we've got work to do when it comes to taking personal responsibility, for taking a stand, for putting ourselves forward. These are, the strengths of Saturn in Aries, and being self-reliant. That is super, super important. In Pisces, when Saturn goes back into Pisces, that'll be on the 1st of September, we will be re-examining where we've kind of let the inner saboteur sort of have too much say. And so Saturn going back into Pisces will remind us that we have this really incredible intuition, if only we would listen to it, instead of internal voices that are just old conditioning. So Saturn stations retrograde 13th of July, moves back into Pisces on the 1st of September, and will go direct on the 28th of November. And as I said, links below for some extra information all about that transit. On the 18th of July, this is when Mercury stations retrograde. So this is going to be up until August the 11th. And Mercury will station at 15 degrees, 34 minutes of Leo. It'll back up to 4 degrees and 14 minutes of Leo. So whenever we have Mercury retrograde in Leo, we've got some kind of story going on here about the script of life. Leo is associated with the theatre, actors, anybody who is on stage. Look at me. It's connected with our creative self-expression. It's a sign that is ruled by the sun, so we definitely want to command attention. But with a retrograde, the voice is internalized. Instead of speaking out and saying, here I am, look at me, we're having to go inwards and try to find out what it is that inspires us, or figure out, am I sort of working from the right script here? Is this mine, or does this belong to someone else? Do I need to rewrite the script? There'll be more on this retrograde. I will do another video so we have a much more comprehensive look at this retrograde period. Now, as Mercury stations retrograde, it's almost like everybody goes quiet. It's like fingers on lips, be quiet, listen, because there is a very important spiritual message coming through. There is a really strong activation of the nodal axis. I've actually put the chart to the 21st of July because this is the date when it's all at its peak. But the run of aspects is Mars will conjoin the South Node on the 21st of July, and then Venus and Hygeia will square the nodal axis on the 22nd of July. The reason that I'm showing the chart for the 21st of July is that, as you can see here, I have circled everything that is relevant. All of these points are on 19 degrees of their sign. So we've got 19 Pisces, the North Node. We've got Venus and Hygeia at 19 Gemini. We've got Mars and the South Node at 19 Virgo. And then we've also got Pallas at 19 of Aquarius, just making a semi-sextile there to the North Node. So generally speaking, Pallas is in the degree of the nodes, as is Mars and Venus and Hygeia. So when a planet is in the degree of the nodes, then it takes on this karmic quality. It has importance. The story is important for our spiritual evolution. But before I talk about the planetary meaning here, I wanted to just reference this 19, because if you are of a similar age to me, you might have had the same song pop into your head when you heard that number, because there was a song called 19 by Paul Hardcastle back in 1985. It was wildly successful. It went to #1 in the UK. It was a huge international hit. One of the reasons was because it was one of the first songs that contained sampling. So technology and music, basically, which kind of is also capturing my attention as well. But the song itself was an anti-war song, and the sample that it included was a soldier from the Vietnam War, and he's often saying, I didn't really know what was going on. I really wasn't sure what was going on. So, which is kind of interesting, because Neptune in Aries could very much be that kind of scenario, sort of the war happening in Aries and the heat of war and the chaos of war, and then Neptune is just kind of, I just don't know, it's like shell shock. So it was speaking about all of these things, how bad war is, how terrible the Vietnam War was particularly, and America's involvement in it, and how damaging it was for all of these poor soldiers, as not to mention obviously all the people in the country as well. So the song just seems to ring out, and I'm quite fascinated by how it seems to bear some echoes to where we are right now. I'm recording this on the 18th of June, so I'm not quite sure when this video is going up yet, but right now our headlines are full of Israel's attack on Iran and whether America is going to get more involved in that situation. So there's an interesting correlation there. Generally, Mars conjunct the South Node, an old conflict. It is reanimating an old conflict. Virgo can actually be associated with the military because it's connected with the services. But it could also just simply be there is an old conflict here that we're trying to let go of. In fact, we are trying to release this. And it's interesting that, Pallas being in the degree of the nodes, Pallas is a diplomat. Pallas is somebody who is a negotiator. She's, political. She's Mars's brother. She does things with her intellect. She solves problems with her intellect rather than her brawn, like her brother Mars. And then Venus is a planet associated with love and harmony and also diplomacy because Venus rules Libra. So Venus is in Gemini. We're trying to have a good heart-to-heart conversation here with Hygeia the seer, who wants to take preventative action, and in Gemini that is going to be a dialogue, and this is squaring the nodes. So this is a missed step. Somebody missed the step here. And so for all of us, whether it's the collective story or a personal story, there's something about needing to tap into the heart to cleanse. I mean, even Virgo has that kind of cleansing sort of energy to it. So we need to cleanse our energy, clean up the way that we're communicating with one another, and make a decision that is heartfelt and it's also preemptive so that we don't fall into dis-ease later down the line. And we can move towards the compassion, the kindness, the sense of interconnectedness, the cosmic, the spiritual, which is the North Node in Pisces. Get away from tearing everything into pieces and kind of overanalyzing and thinking that we have to be perfect because, none of us are perfect. Now, as Venus and Hygeia form their squares to the nodal axis, we also begin Leo season. So the sun moves into Leo on the 22nd of July. This is the sign that the sun rules. So it is working extra strong in this sign. But we do have a muted effect because Mercury is retrograde in Leo. So we are in the period of time each year where we are considering the role that we play in life and who we want to be and what we want to call ourselves and what we want to create. But there's a lot of questioning around this with Mercury retrograde in Leo. And this is going to be compounded because we're going to have a new moon in Leo on the 24th of July. So the moon and sun will meet in Leo, and this new moon is going to be opposite to Pluto. So we have the urge to make some kind of new start, to have a new beginning that will help us to enjoy life more, that will help us to create. The sign Leo is all the things that we do for fun. It's helping our inner child to blossom. But that opposition to Pluto is going to bring up some challenges and some fears. It's basically a feeling of stage fright with this new moon opposing Pluto. Again, I will be doing a really deep dive into this lunation over on my Patreon and on my Substack. On the 30th of July, Chiron will station retrograde at 27 degrees and 9 minutes of Aries. It will back up to 22 degrees and 35 minutes of Aries, and it will be in retrograde motion until the 2nd of January 2026. So just as with any retrograde planet, when the planet goes retrograde, then we are internalizing our experience of this energy. And essentially Chiron, because he's all sort of focused on this healing mission, wherever he moves in the chart, he says there's pain here, There's wounding here, there are scars here that are stopping you from fulfilling your potential, but also at the same time, something that you could learn deeply from. This could be a special skill that's developed from all the things that you've been through. So Chiron is always working on these kinds of themes, but in the retrograde period, we get an opportunity to revisit some of the things that we haven't healed yet. Particularly those things that we like to just stick a bandage on and just hope for the best, and just try and keep going. Particularly Aries, Aries doesn't like to be hampered by anything that slows it down. So often we just try to keep going. But at some point, we have to stop and attend to our wounds, whether they are physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. And that is the task that we have when Chiron stations retrograde. It's an important period of time, because otherwise the wound just festers, and then that's going to sap our energy in Aries. It's going to take away our energy. We're not going to be able to do the things that we want to do. So that is the purpose of Chiron retrograde. The final aspect of the month is Venus moving into Cancer. This is on the 31st of July. So again, as Venus changes signs, this changes how we approach our relationships, matters of the heart, also to do with money as well, anything that's connected with our values, the things that we find precious. And it also tells us that what we value, what we love is changing as well. It's moving with the themes of the signs as Venus goes into each sign. So Venus in Cancer says this is about love of family, love of home. We express ourselves from the heart emotionally. This is very much about, again, being in our feelings, which we're learning a lot about with Jupiter in Cancer. So really being deep in our feelings, our relationships become more nurturing. We kind of want to mollycoddle each other, to mother each other. And that's a kind of nice quality. It's very soft, very sensitive, super cuddly. It's pajamas, Sunday afternoon, curled up with your partner, eating nice food and watching a movie. It's that kind of vibe. The cozy PJs vibe. And you don't have to have a partner to get into the PJs and sit on the sofa and eat something nice and watch the telly. So Venus in Cancer is really, really nice for sort of taking care of ourselves, supporting ourselves in a way that makes us feel safe. We talk about self-love with Venus in Aries, but that's to kind of make us feel strong. But in Cancer, it's to make us feel safe, and that's important. The downside to Venus in Cancer is that sometimes we can get a little moody, and particularly in love relationships, if there has been any conflicts or problems, then that moodiness can really get triggered, and sometimes we can also regress with Venus in Cancer, so we end up being a little childish with one another. So that is the thing that we need to be careful of. But if we can use the best of this transit, which is soft, sensitive, kind, nourishing, then that is really going to help to offset a lot of the other bigger transits that are in play. So this brings me to the end of this reading for July 2025. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do click a like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm. If you would like to hear more from me, as I was mentioning before, I do have a Patreon, I do have Substack, so I will leave those links below, as well as my website. I also post daily on social media, and I have a special page for my daily meditative posts that are based on the astrology of the day. So I hope to see you somewhere around cyberspace soon, and in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.